Joining us now is Ohio's United States Senator Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown, prior to being elected to the Senate, was U.S. Representative for the 13th District. He also served as Ohio's Secretary of State, was a member of the Ohio General Assembly, and has taught in Ohio's public schools and universities. Senator Brown, thank you for joining us again on the program.
RJ, good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, listen, the last time we talked, you talked a lot about the power of stories, the power of narratives, the power of anecdotes to drive a political message. And what happened this year, you think, in the election? What story wasn't told that led to the outcome we saw?
I think that that voters need to see the difference. They need a stronger contrast. What the Democrats stand for, and when Democrats vote for trade issues that outsource jobs, or Democrats say, well, we ought to think about adjusting downward with chain CPI, the cost of living increase for Social Security, or when Democrats don't stand up enough on issues like minimum wage. I mean, we're losing voters. I mean, we still do okay among voters that make $50,000 or $60,000 or less a year, but we don't do as well as we should have. We're not talking to voters who have seen, most of the country who have seen their wages stagnant for the last 15 years, and we've lost 5 million manufacturing jobs. Between 2000 and 2010, we've grown back about 600,000 of those. The jobs that have displaced those 5 million, even the manufacturing jobs, don't pay as well as they used to, and so workers don't see they don't see a Democratic Party that looks to be fighting for them on issues they most care about.
Well, it also seems that there's a narrative, however artificial it is, from the Republican Party. It's one that hangs together, and it's one that says, the government is oppressing you, and government is not your friend, and these guys are working against you. It's hard for me to tease out what the Democratic message is nowadays, other than we're not those guys.
Well, I think you're pretty much right on that. I think that the voters pretty much see that Democrats don't seem to be fighting for them. I mean, I look at some of the people that serve in Democratic administrations. They're too often from Wall Street. I just was meeting right before this show with a group of sort of citizens, public interest people that are some from labor, some from groups like Public Citizen, who have taken on Wall Street, or on, in my view, the right side of these issues. And a number of Democrats don't want to criticize Wall Street. A number of Democrats don't want to take on the oil industry. I mean, if you're really a progressive, you want to change the structure of how our financial system works. We know it works for Wall Street. It's not working for Main Street. And I think that I think you're right exactly when you say that, RJ, that too many of us too often just say we're not that group. But that group, I mean, I once heard Bill Clinton say that the voters don't really think that either party's going to do anything. I mean, the working class white voters especially don't think either party is going to do anything for them. But then he went on to kind of talk about, but Democrats don't seem to make the contrast in what we are going to do for them in terms of fighting for economic issues.
We're talking to Senator Sherrod Brown, and you've mentioned a couple times, you were quoted in the New York Times saying too many Democrats are close to Wall Street, too many Democrats are willing to outsource jobs, and so on. How does, whether it's in the halls of the Senate or in Democratic meetings or whatever, when you say this, how does this resonate with other national Democrats? Do they take umbrage, some of them? Do they say, yeah, we desperately need a message and tell us more?
Well, it's mixed. It's a number of people, after I made some of those comments in caucus the other day, came up afterwards. A couple of them said it there, kind of echoed it, and either said thanks for saying it, more or less, or echoed what I said, and came up to me afterwards. But a number sort of they didn't say much, but they just don't agree with it. And I mean, you can see that on a whole host of issues here. We're going to be facing a trade issue coming up, Trade Promotion Authority. used to be called fast-track legislation, and then a couple of trade agreements that, and we don't have, again, a very clear, concise message. So if you're a voter and you think, let's see, on Wall Street, the Republicans are totally in the pocket of Wall Street, but most Democrats aren't all that good fighting Wall Street either. And then they think on trade agreements, when I see these trade agreements that the public really doesn't like. I'm a voter in working-class Zanesville, Ohio, and I see that, well, the Democrats, the Republicans are totally in the pocket of these companies that outsource, but Democrats don't seem to be standing up either. So when Republicans talk about entitlement reform and strengthening Social Security, and that means we've got to cut the cost of living adjustment, they don't quite say it that way, and Democrats then respond by, well, we can compromise on this, and so we lose working class senior citizens. I mean, that's the most mind-boggling of all, that seniors, particularly white seniors, I mean, we obviously do very well among minority seniors, but a 70-year-old white working class man or woman is voting for the party that clearly wants to privatize Social Security, clearly wants to privatize Medicare, clearly, history says they oppose the creation of these two programs. Every time they've had a chance, they've tried to cripple them or privatize them, and because Democrats don't make it clear, wait a minute, Social Security is the only pension that most people in this country have now. We shouldn't be cutting it. We should be finding a way to increase it, because it's not about a budget. It's not about the budget. It's really about retirement security, and we're betraying a whole host of people whose entire income at the age of 75, or almost entire income, is the $1,200 a month they get from Social Security. We should be fighting for them instead of saying, well, we've got to save this program, and here's how we do it, by cutting a little bit here and there.
Well, now we're talking with Senator Sherrod Brown. I know you have an online petition to expand Social Security benefits. You've been very strong on this issue. Do you think if more of your colleagues in the Senate had adopted this issue of, let's say, Social Security expansion early on, rather than, a couple did late in their campaigns and so on, and made it a central theme? After all, this was its signature Democratic Party accomplishment 75 years ago. Do you think that might have helped a little bit? I know this was a tough year no matter how you cut it for the Democrats, but do you think that might have helped?
I sure it would have helped, although I'm not second-guessing any of these races, because it was just the worst environment. All that, the guy running in Arkansas, somebody actually figured out during his 90-minute debate with Mark Pryor, the Republican, said Barack Obama's name literally every 17 seconds during debate, literally every 17 seconds when he was speaking. He said this 5-syllable name, Barack Obama, and he just said it over and over and over. So it was a terrible environment for Democrats in tough states. So I don't take anything away from them, but I also think that voters need to be thinking that, wait a minute, you're going to vote for the party that went after Social Security. You're going to vote for the party that opposes minimum wage. I mean, keep in mind, in some of these states, Republican states, we won the minimum wages on the ballot and passed something like 2-1. Keep in mind too that polling around Election Day said that of people that voted, 2-1 of those, 2 out of 3 of those voters think that government is pretty much is for the rich, is structured in a way that it's for the rich and powerful. I mean, I just think a strong populist message. We've got to, we're not going to. I mean, I understand the role race plays in this, and it's horrible that our country still hasn't dealt with that issue, and it's all parts of the country. It's not just the South, and I understand all that, but we've got to grab some of those people back by a stronger economic message, and it means that all of us as Democrats, as progressives, need to carry that message.
Well, Senator Sherrod Brown, you're in a unique position to do that because you're on the Senate Banking Committee, speaking of the rich and powerful. Where are we? Look, it seems that we haven't solved our too-big-to-jail problem. We haven't seen indictments or prosecutions. We see a lot of repeat offenses from some of the banks that have already paid large fraud settlements and so on. Is it still possible, with the change in power in the Senate and so on, is it still possible to use the Senate Banking Committee as a tool to highlight what's going on Wall Street and push for change?
Absolutely. It's harder because we don't have a majority, but it was hard anyway because we don't have a majority on many of the the issues that I care about, I think the public cares about on keeping Wall Street more in check, that we didn't have majority in the committee even for that when the Democrats were in the majority. But here's where your question's important, I think, is that we have the opportunity always to put these issues front and center. And what we've seen when we've done that in the last couple of years is we've seen a better regulatory process. We have higher capital standards for banks now, in part because of the legislation I've worked on with others on higher capital standards, our too big to fail issues. And so sometimes the public responds, sometimes regulators respond, sometimes other elected officials respond if you raise these issues. But it's up to me as one of the senior members in that committee now, and is in one of the, I hope, most progressive, loudest, persistent voices to keep making that case. That's one reason I came on this show, because you have a reputation of doing that, and I want to not just talk to people that are friendly. I want to talk to conservatives. A lot of conservatives in this country think that Wall Street's way too powerful. So this isn't just a progressive issue. But those conservatives, if they get elected to the House and Senate and have that title, they all of a sudden get a lot friendlier to Wall Street, because Wall Street comes to their campaign events, and Wall Street can treat them well and can help keep them in office. So it's up to us to, when necessary, embarrass people for their proclivity to stand with Wall Street on issue after issue after issue.
Well, Senator Sherrod Brown, I just have one last question for you, and you may be not happy with me for asking it, but a couple people said if you're going to be interviewing Sherrod Brown, please ask him if he's thinking about running for president.
I don't mind the question, but I have no interest. I love what I'm doing. I feel privileged that I've gotten to be a member of the United States Senate from maybe the premier swing state in the country, and I've been honored twice by the voters. I hope to do it a third time. I think I'm 60, just turned 62, but no interest in president, no interest in vice president. I don't think I could do this job as well and be this outspoken on these issues if I were looking over my shoulder, thinking about the Iowa caucuses or the New Hampshire primaries, or thinking about how I'm going to fund a presidential campaign. So I'm very satisfied with where I am, and I appreciate the people that have said that to you, and that's as far as it goes. Thank you. One other point, a Republican senator in New Hampshire from Vermont once years ago said, when I look around the Senate, I recognize that the only cure for the presidential virus among United States senators is embalming fluid. So I kind of get it that a number of my colleagues want to go there, but I'm not one of them.
So you're an outlier, in other words.
Well, I don't know that I'm an outlier. I think many of my colleagues don't want to be president, but let's just say there's a significant number that do. And I'm not critical of them, but you don't get to the Senate without ambition. I understand that. I just don't have ambition to be to the next step.
Understood. And thank you so much for coming on the program.
Right,
thank you for answering all our questions.
All right, good questions. Thanks, RJ. See you.
We'll see you soon. That was Senator Sherrod Brown, and we will be right back after this on the Zero Hour.